has a story. Every nighttime has a day.
The question, well, what is CSR?
CSR requires a certain level of enlightenment for it to take roots.
Does CSR come in because of governance failure or government failure?
It is important that every person, whether you are an organization, an individual, play a role in ensuring that the environment you are living in is safe, is good enough to do business and to also live.
Taxation is actually CSR. Taxation can also be used as a tool to encourage CSR, and we're coming up with regulations.
For me, CSR is practiced by most companies as a side salad. Yeah? And to come to the business case, it's not very difficult to convince someone to have a side salad. We know it's healthy. Yeah? We will benefit from it.
The issue of CSR is important. And as Prof said, the need for Africa to begin to look for our own solutions and to begin to talk about issues that would take us from where we are and begin to place us in the arena of those that we ought to belong.
CSR should be an important but not overriding concern of the private sector. Whereas social responsibility is in fact government's main concern.
But I firmly believe that corporate social responsibility is key to the private sector reaching its full potential, and that corporate responsibility is also absolutely key to the future of Africa.
To a glorious end. We'll strive for a better tomorrow. It may go wrong, it may go right. Celebrate your life. Is there something good right where you are right now? So open up your window, there's a lining in the sky. Open up your heart and embrace the sun. Stop asking why. We all walk the road of pleasure. We all walk the road of pain. How do you appreciate sunshine?
It's enlightened me on what CSR is. It's enlightened me that, you know what, the fact that in Africa, a lot of what the CSR we practice is corporate philanthropy is still part of CSR. And just to show that CSR is evolving in Africa, to be honest. So, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think we necessarily have to adopt CSR as it's done in the West. We can have our own form of Nigerian CSR. We can have our own African CSR. Because the truth is, before you start talking about integrating social and environmental concerns in a business, you have to first think about food, shelter, the basic things. If the basic things are taken care of, then we can start talking about, you know, sustainability reporting and all that. But if we don't take care of the basic things, it's a bit academic to start talking about sustainability reporting as a form of CSR or human rights and all that being integrated as CSR. So I've learned a lot, and it's been, my expectations have been, they haven't been met, they've been surpassed.
In all honesty, I think there's been sufficient food for thought. The topics have been touched upon, the dilemmas around CSR and the way it's being understood, the way it's being defined. Also the fact that CSR is a container concept in a way, and that one might talk about the same yet have a different understanding of what one means. That has been touched upon very well. Also the difficulties within the African context compared to CSR, which originates more from the Western countries. So that has all been touched upon, and I'm very happy with that.
Corporate social responsibility has been one subject that has been quite topical and often misunderstood. There have been different, views to it. Some of the view that there is really no point in corporate social responsibility. Others, feel strongly that there is. I'm one of those who feel strongly there is. And even among those who feel there is, there's still a debate whether it should be voluntary or it should be regulatory. I won't tell you where I stand in that divide, but I had very high hopes for this program, for this conference, particularly because of the caliber of speakers and panelists that the organizers had pulled together, and also the way it had been thoughtfully structured.
To say those who were watching, I think there's something about the audience, in terms of the quality of the audience. Like for example, our session was called the CEO Roundtable. Where most of the people there were CEO, but a lot of the audience wasn't CEO. But I guess, in a sense, I expected what I call more senior participation in the subject matter. But it's also an indication of the importance people attach to the subject matter, which, of course, is what the whole conference is all about, to try and raise the profile of CSR. Hopefully, the next edition will attract, more senior people. I would say a bit of better organization. Hopefully more support in terms of sponsorships and so on.
The fact that corporates need to be doing more to improve their environment and add value to the community that they live in. So it's nice. And it's nice that different angles have come up, like how corporate social responsibility is not just for the domain of the big blue chip companies, but also the responsibility of every single little business, because every little business, and that little business includes a market woman's store in the market, everybody can add some value to the community that they're in. It may be as simple as just teaching some illiterate shop girl how to read. It's corporate social responsibility.
To think of CSR as something that's coming to Africa. So the increased attention that it's starting to get, not just from multinationals, but also very clearly from local companies here in Africa, is very encouraging. And I think CSR is going to become increasingly important in this continent.
I think this conference is coming at the right time. It is very important for us to note that organizations have to start giving back. They owe a social responsibility to their community. His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, also shares the same vision. And in his speech, he was also very thankful for those who have all come forward and have started doing it already.
One, to support our belief that you need more actors to address Nigeria's social problems, but also to build up expertise in this area, because it's still a very small field in Nigeria, and people need to understand what it's about and what it can achieve.
I was very interested to be invited to this first African Roundtable and conference on the business case for corporate social responsibility. It's something I feel very strongly about, and I had a good memory of when I was here last year for the Karamo Foundation on rule of law, and I thought that it really would be a good opportunity to share my passion about the role of the private sector in the 21st century. I was glad to be able to come along to the end and listen for the last half an hour or so of the CEO Roundtable. Some very good questions and a real sense of the practicalities. And that's good because it's important to understand the corporate culture, the sense of what is the best way for corporations here in Nigeria to be good corporate citizens. And what that enabled me to do was to understand this morning in my keynote that I could talk about the international framing, and that it's very timely because at the international level, Professor John Ruggie is just submitting this week in Geneva his guiding principles, which are guiding for government and guiding for corporations about corporate responsibility. And so we had, I think, a good discussion about how that then is translated in practice in a country like Nigeria. I also spoke about some practical examples of corporations that have benefited, like the Gap benefiting because of problems in its supply chain. But when it began to take its responsibility seriously, it knew how to deal with this very quickly and did not have a reputation problem. I think it's very good to have those kind of links with what's happening in other countries. I also recommended that Nigeria might think of hosting a network
a regional network meeting of the networks of the Global Compact, the United Nations Global Compact. We did have a discussion about the fact that in some respects the United Nations Global Compact is not the highest rigorous standard. It's a voluntary commitment. But now with the guiding principles, there's an opportunity to align, and there will be a really active discussion in every region. So either there could be a regional meeting of networks of the Global Compact for Africa, or Nigeria could host an international, as, for example, Turkey did recently in Istanbul. I think that it's more difficult in a number of African countries because of earlier experiences. For example, in Liberia, Firestone had negotiated a very unfavourable concessionary agreement, and when President Johnson Sirleaf came into office, she had the tough job of renegotiating, and the Firestone didn't want to do it, but in fact in the end they did, and that was much better for the workers, for the unions, for Liberia itself to get more of the added value of Firestone's involvement. And so I think it's important that the guidelines now at the international level are not just about private sector corporate responsibility. They're also saying there's a duty on states to protect their people from violations by corporations of their human rights, violations by polluting water, by land grabs, by unfair conditions of work, lack of health and safety in the workplace, etc. So that's a duty of states. I think for a number of African countries there will be quite a lot of work to do to make sure that the enabling environment complies with that duty of states, as well as the responsibility of the private sector.
The way forward on how to ensure that corporate social responsibility is part and parcel of the development process in Nigeria and in Africa, as we're moving closer to achieving that. So yes, I think my expectations have been phenomenally superseded, and I congratulate Thistle Praxis for the organization.
Institutionalizing CSR in Nigeria. We have CSR International, let's have CSR Nigeria. There will be a link between the community, the stakeholders, and CSR as a concept itself.
Leadership recruitment into governance in Nigeria. That is one issue that is very dear to my heart. Leadership recruitment process into government in Nigeria. We don't have a very good leadership recruitment process. Not just elections alone, what manner of people come forward for leadership positions in Nigeria. I think Thistle Praxis or organizers like this are in a better position to interrogate the issues properly, much more than those of us who are the public arena can do. Well, it would be that I pray, it would be a prayer, that this organization will grow from strength to strength so that it will be in a better position to even do a bigger conference.
CSR is here to stay in Africa, and I'm very impressed by the outcome of this conference, which was to set up the African Alliance on CSR. I would definitely become a member and would like to be part of, informing the decisions to come about with the, the actual concept note or the documents to found this African Alliance on CSR. And I'm looking forward to all the good things that will be coming out of Thistle Praxis Consulting.
CSR is here to stay, and companies should increasingly look at opportunities that are bound in their host communities to improve the quality of life. Companies should also understand that CSR is not about giving token to the society. CSR is actually more about how you do your business. Responsible business has to do with how responsible you are to your staff, to your environment, to your host communities, to other stakeholders. So we all have a role to play in coming together to see how we can do business in a better way, in a way that is more friendly to our society, more friendly to our environment. And so while we are chasing the profit, we should also remember that if we don't have the society there, if we don't have the host community there, we'll probably not be in business. So let's do the much we can for them so that we can make it better.
I'm very, very happy to be a part of this at the onset, because I think in the long run it's going to make a very, very big difference in development, business, corporate social responsibility, and that line of thinking on the continent. So I'm just very excited.
Yes, I mean, what I hoped to get was a sense of where Africa is at on this agenda, on what the leading thinking is, and also to learn myself, and all of those expectations have been met. No, I think the coverage was comprehensive. I was encouraged to see that a lot of the discussion was about going beyond philanthropy, so that suggests that there's a maturity that's emerging in the market, and there's some very critical and challenging voices, and that's exactly what we need. Well, what I hope is that we'll see far more challenging of what companies are calling CSR, and picking out some of the contradictions that we see with many of the companies who have CSR programs but are doing things that are actually undermining that, whether it's negative lobbying or poor supply chain practices or tax evasion. I think we need to start holding companies far more to account, and this is the sort of forum where we can discuss those contradictions and those case studies. I think the most important thing is that Africa needs to stop looking for the answer abroad. I think what we really need here is a homegrown version of CSR. Of course, we can learn some lessons from overseas, but actually my main point to this conference was that the overseas approach in the West has failed, and so why would you copy it? I think Africa has the opportunity to leapfrog to a new version of CSR, CSR 2.0, which is far more transformative and which really reverses the trends that we see, that the sort of CSR that's been practiced in Europe and the United States.
Coming to this conference, actually, one of the expectations I had was to actually see private sector companies embracing the idea of working together collaboratively in carrying out the CSR activities. And from the few I've had so far, from the presentations I've seen, and from the discussions and questions raised, I'm fully assured that a lot of the participants that attended this conference are actually left with that conviction and the need to work together collaboratively to actually meet and to deal with the problems that we have in the society.
If you have never seen rain, so here's to a new beginning.